morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the SS656 Design, Development and Validation of mRNA-based Diagnostics webinar launch. So before we start, please note that there will be a pop-up screen on your right where you can input your questions for our Q&A session later. So for our opening address, we would like to welcome Biomedical and Health Standards Committee Chairman, Dr. Yong Chet, a medical doctor by training and having held senior roles in management consulting, healthcare management, technology innovation, and business transformation endeavors. He is currently a founding member and chief operating officer of Good Doctor Technology Singapore, and an early stage regional digital healthcare startup backed by Ping An Good Doctor, Grab, and SoftBank Vision Fund. Dr. Yong, please.
For the introduction. Hi, good morning, everyone. Warm welcome to the webinar launch of Singapore Standard 656, Design, Development and Validation of microRNA-based diagnostics. Now, this standard provides guidance for the evaluation studies of assays based on its defined intended purpose, including commercial in vitro diagnostic assays, as well also for assays developed for clinical laboratory for diagnostic purposes. Hence, it is not difficult to imagine that the landmark foundational work related to SS656 will have profound significant impact on downstream applications that directly touch the lives of people. As with any endeavor, there is a starting point to the journey. Genesis and core to the drafting of SS656 was a result of a collaboration between stand-up Singapore organizations, notably A*STAR, DXT Hub, Nexus, and the Health Science Authority, HSA, in coming up with a reference and guideline for microRNA diagnostics, which practically could be used by HSA for the regulatory work and involves the registration of diagnostic assays that utilize the fundamental technology of microRNA. Subsequently, the working group was formed with the additional participation of National University of Singapore and US, Singapore Polytechnic, and as well as Tan Tock Seng Hospital. Now, work on drafting the standard officially kicked off in November 2019, and it took a record of only 3.5 months to complete. Now, that is not the only accolade of this standard work. During the process, this standard has gathered international attention and the recognition of key industry leaders, of whom we are humbled and grateful for their involvement. They are Professor Frank Slack of Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, Harvard Medical School, Dr. Fong Yu Lian of Johnson & Johnson, and Dr. Kenneth Cole of the US National Institute of Standards and Technology, whom have joined as resource members of the drafting team. Now, such was the level of collaboration and talent that came together for SS656. Globally renowned talent who are also absolute experts in the field. It will be hard for us to suppress this level of mastery for some time, I hazard a guess. Now, as if the accolades shared were not impressive enough, the standard has also been proposed and discussed at the ISO level with the Secretariat and Convenience of ISO TC 212 Working Group 4, concurring to utilize SS656 as the basis of their own ISO standards. So, before I hand over the stage to our next speaker, allow me once again to congratulate the effort and achievement of the working group members of Singapore Standard 656 for their significant and amazing work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Yong. So we would like our participants to have to answer a short survey after each of our presenters later. So next up, we have Mr. Kevin Tan, who is the Secretary for the PHSC, to give us a short introduction on the Singapore Standardization Program. Mr. Kevin Tan, please.
Hi, thank you, Long Hoi. Good morning, everyone. I'll be your appetizer before the main course of the webinar launch. So I'll be presenting on the Singapore Standardization Program. Okay, so there's basically 3 short sections. This is the outline. So the first section will be on the overview of the standardization program. So Enterprise Singapore is the national standards body for Singapore. So what they do is they administer the Singapore Standardization Program, formulate policies, strategies, programs, and procedures for the program. They also publish the Singapore standards as well as technical references, and they represent Singapore in the international and regional fora. So the Singapore Standards Council, which is appointed by ESG, is an industry-led committee. They approve the establishment and withdrawal of standards. They also advise Enterprise Singapore in implementing the policies, strategies, and programs for the Singapore Standardization Program. So we have 3 coordinating committees which advises on the Singapore Standards Council, namely the Smart Nation, Civil Industry, as well as Promotion. And there's also a new committee for cybersecurity as well. So the Singapore Standards Council looks after 10 different committees as of now. And each of these standards committees, they have technical committees under them, who then also have working groups. So at each level of the committees, we try to engage the different stakeholders to actually get a more holistic voice and view from the industry itself. So in each of these committees, we try to have different stakeholders such as industry associations, consumers, government and professional bodies, and also institutes of higher learning. So there are 2 types of national standards. One is the Singapore Standard, which is a nationally recognized document. It should be reviewed at the end of the stability period of not more than 8 years. The next one we have is the technical reference, which is sort of a pre-Singapore standard developed at meeting the urgent industry needs. These technical references are implemented for 3 years or less before a review, after which during the review, the results can be for a continuation of the trial, elevation of the technical reference to a Singapore standard, or a withdrawal of the technical reference. So there are different types of standards, namely codes of practice, guides, methods of test, specifications, as well as vocabulary and terminology. So we'll move on to the development process. So how standards are usually developed is that a new item proposal has to be put up to Enterprise Singapore as well as the standards committees for assessment. Once it is deemed significant, we will make an announcement for commencement of work and also to invite our stakeholders and participants to join us in the standardization process and drafting. We will then initiate the development of the standard, after which you can take 2 routes. One is the technical reference, and one is the Singapore standard. The main difference is that the technical reference do not go through a 2-month public consultation. So just a short intro on the timeline. So usually the technical reference takes about 6 to 12 months to develop, but the Singapore standard usually takes about 1 to 2 years. So international participation. So Enterprise Singapore is the national standards body. What they do internationally is to facilitate the process of negotiation and also consensus building, and also to facilitate close cooperation and synergy between the international standardization. So how we do that is that we have national mirror committees to mirror what is being done at the international site, for example, ISO and IEC. And also our national mirror committees are supposed to represent Singapore, the Singapore industry, and give a consensus voice to represent Singapore internationally. So how do we participate internationally? We start off with the same form. We will then be put up to Enterprise Singapore as well as the Standards Committee. If it's deemed significant, we will consult the relevant stakeholders. We will then form the committee and then participate internationally. So just a short intro on the Biomedical Health Standards Committee, which this Standard 656 is under. So our objective is to identify, develop, promote critical standards to support the biomedical and healthcare clusters to enable the development of Singapore into a world-class biomedical science hub. So our scope, we oversee the development of biomedical and healthcare standards relevant for application by local industry with a focus on quality systems, processes, medical devices, laboratory testing, biotechnology, therapeutics, complementary health products, and also health informatics. So just some highlights on some of the key standards that we have published, which is 644, which is on the delivery of medication. The next one is 656, which we are here today for, actually. And the other one is SS582, specification for thermal images for human screening. So I think during the current situation, a lot of people, we see thermal images being deployed in malls and stuff. And this standard is to advise on the specification of thermal images used and also the deployment of such thermal images. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kevin Tan.